I just watched the South Park 25th anniversary concert, and it was so great to see Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson playing together again, especially after the passing of Neil Peart. It spurred me to go on a little Rush kick, and man, their music has aged well for me. In my opinion, one of the most important elements of Rush's music is Alex Lifeson's chord voicings. I think Alex is super underrated as a guitarist, and he's often overlooked because Geddy and Neil were so good at what they did, but one of the main reasons Rush's music sounds so huge as a trio is because of Alex's chord work. So I've put together the ultimate Alex Lifeson chord lesson. I have a PDF available of all of these chords, and if you're interested in getting that, please leave a comment below. And also consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification. All of that stuff really helps me out. And I'm also going to link my mailing list below. If you join that, I'm going to send out a copy of this PDF right away. I did my best to include as many chords as I possibly could here, and I'll talk about which songs I learned these from and how they're used. Now, this isn't a riff lesson, so I'm not going to go into specific Alex Lifeson parts. It's more about the theory behind these chords and how they can be used in your own music, because all of these chords are really useful. And of course, Alex Lifeson didn't invent a lot of these chord voicings, and you'll find them in a bunch of other artists' music. But when I hear these kind of voicings, I instantly think of Rush, especially when they're done in a prog rock context. So let's get into it. This first chord is sometimes called the Alex Lifeson chord, and it looks like this. Basically, it's an F-sharp major bar chord, and you lift up the bar so you have the open B and E strings ringing on top. And this is technically an F-sharp 7 suspended. This is the first chord used in Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres off of Hemispheres, and it really sets up the mood of that song. Alex likes these suspended chords a lot, and we're going to see more of these on this list. There's two major types of suspended chords. A suspended fourth chord is 1, 4, and 5. So if I do this off of F sharp, it's 4, 5. So F sharp, B, C sharp. And this chord can be either major or minor because it doesn't have a third in it. It could be major, also could be minor. So it works in multiple contexts. There's also a suspended second chord, which is 1, 2, 5. So it would be F sharp, G sharp, and C sharp. Same deal here. It could be major or minor, depending on the context. Another great use of this particular chord happens in Limelight. There's some other cool chords in here as well, and at its core this is a basic chord progression in G sharp minor. 1, 6, 7. But Alex is extending each of these chords for extra color. You have G sharp minor 11 with that 11. You have an E with a sharp 4, and the F sharp 7 suspended. And each of these use the open B string to help connect them together. A lot of these chords will have open strings. It's a staple of Lifeson's rhythm playing, and because Rush was a trio, anything the guys could do to fill up as much space as possible was integral to their sound. The open strings add so much thickness to all of these chords, and it's a big reason why these songs sound so huge with just 3 musicians. Now I want to go back to Hemispheres. This song is chock full of awesome Alex Lifeson chords. Right off the bat you have the F sharp 7 suspended, then an A sus 2, and a C major 7 with G in the bass. Notice the open B and E string on all of these chords, helping to connect them together. Then there's this part. Basically, you're just taking that F sharp 7 suspended chord and moving it around while keeping the top 2 strings open. It goes to Bsus, and then A add 9, and then D, this would be like a D6, 9. These are all major chords, but the extensions are coming because of those open strings. So on the B you have, there's your sus. On the A you have the 9 there on the B string, and on the D you have a 6 and a 9, which is a really interesting voicing. And these are really useful chords on the guitar. You can kind of move them around at will. There's a few places they don't work, but I love that one on the 1st fret. The 3rd fret also is good. 8th fret, 10, 7, 5. These just sound great. Pretty much all the time. Next, there's a couple of cool G major 7 voicings. The first one happens in the clean part, and there's this half-step dissonance here. Really gross on its own, but in context sounds nice. And that kind of dissonance happens in a lot of these chords. In fact, the first chord we looked at has a half-step dissonance as well. but once again, in context, sounds really nice. And then when he plays with distortion, he's doing this G major 7. He's just adding his pinky in. There's a couple of F sharp minor chords here as well. There's this one, which is the same as the G sharp minor 11 from Limelight, just 2 frets down. So it's F sharp minor 11. There's also this one in the clean picking part, which is F sharp minor 7 with a flat 9, F flat 9 being the open G string. That's not a chord you hear very often, but it sounds really cool. Basically, this progression is just G to F sharp minor. Pretty simple progression, but it's made a lot more interesting by extending the chords. Or at the end of this section, there's an F major 7 sharp 11 chord that's played like this. And usually I do that voicing like so, which is one of those movable shapes, like the F sharp 7 suspended down a fret. But I really like this voicing as well. It sounds really rich. Later on, at about 5 minutes into the song, it goes from B flat to A minor, which is a transposed version of the G to F sharp minor from earlier. And it features this cool chord, which is a B flat major 13 or a B flat major 6, that G note being the 13. It also has this B flat major 7, which is the same shape as the G major 7 I showed earlier, just up 3 frets. Basically, this part is a transposed version of that original part. Up 3 frets. And you'll notice that Alex likes to take the same chord shape and move it around. This is a very effective approach to get some more interesting chords on the guitar. At the end of this section, there's this chord, which just has the notes A, E, and G. Be like A minor 7 no third or A 7 no third. It's a very open sounding chord. And because it's not major or minor, it's kind of not happy or sad. It's something else. It's mysterious or maybe ethereal. I'll let you decide. Moving on to La Villa Strangiata, which is also off of Hemispheres, the song starts with this chord, which is a C add 9. What this is a G major chord, like a stock cowboy chord, slid up to the 8th fret. And I use this chord a lot as a substitute for a basic C major. If you have G to C, in a country context, for instance, you go G to C. So a lot of these chords can be used outside of Prog to great effect. The Bridge of Circumstances, which is also off Hemispheres, has some of the same movable chords that Hemispheres does. Also has these 2 chords. Just power chords, C and D, with the open G string on top. This D add 9 chord is in the song Trees, and it has an open string on the bottom and the top. In Red Barchetta off of Moving Pictures, Alex takes a basic A major chord and then shifts the bass to G and then to F sharp. And you can call these slash chords. You have A with G in the bass, A with F sharp in the bass. And keeping that same chord on top and moving the bass around creates a different sound with each chord. The bridge riff in Red Barchetta pedals on the open D string while playing these higher G and A triads. This is a shape that Lifeson likes a lot. It's just a D major chord. I'm going to slide it around. But having that low D underneath adds some extra power and weight to these higher chord voicings. This is another one you can move around. Sounds really nice. Another example of shifting chords over the open D string happens in part 5 of 2112. So you have a D and then a higher inversion of D, C, D, C, and then F, C, and then finally to an A major chord. So all of these chords except the last one are over that D pedal. Really cool sound. In the spirit of radio, there's this chord, which is an E major chord with G sharp in the bass, or a first inversion major chord. In this case, E major has E, G sharp, and B, third being G sharp. Put that in the bass. Now it sounds very different from a root position E major chord. Here's first inversion. So it's another way to get some more mileage out of a basic chord. He also plays this chord in the spirit of radio, which is an E power chord based off the A string. Then you open up the low string and the upper strings. Big open chord. It sounds really nice with the distortion, and it sounds good on acoustic guitar as well. And there's these suspended chords. It's just a major chord, and you have the suspension to it. And then there's these Sus2 voicings. Once again, these aren't major or minor, they're suspended, so have a good open sound to them. And because you have no open strings in this particular voicing, you can kind of move it around at will. In Free Will, there's this B minor 11 chord. Really beautiful open position chord, and he just takes the lower note down 1 fret to get B flat major 7. So B minor 11, B flat major 7, a really nice chord move. Later in the song there's this chord, which is another suspended second chord, in this case F suspended second. Very nice sound, you have that second on top. You can move this one around too because there's no open strings. The chorus of Subdivisions looks like this. This is another nice way to play a basic G major chord. You have the unison note between the G and B strings. There's also this A add 9 chord. I think of these add 9 chords as progressive rock power chords or prog rock power chords. I actually did an entire lesson on that subject if you want to check it out. Jacob's Ladder has this chord at the beginning, which is just a C major chord up an entire octave, but you keep those ringing open strings. And this C major chord shape you can move around just like some of the other ones I did, like those ones. C major can go up 2 frets, that makes a cool D sus sound. There's also F, or G, A, even B flat. So that's another one to experiment with moving around. In the camera eye, there's this chord. It's like a B flat add 9 with the 9 in the bass, C. Now Geddy's playing the root of B flat underneath, so the guitar doesn't have to have the root note on the bottom. There's also these chords later. Really what this is D flat major, and then D flat suspended. But once again, Geddy's playing the root of D flat. So we have 3rd in the bass, and then 4th in the bass. And then that goes down a half step. After that last section, there's another suspended chord. I told you that Alex Lifeson likes these suspended chords. And this one is really nice and big sounding. It's probably actually a major chord in the context of the song, but the suspension keeps it kind of ambiguous. And you can move this shape around as well because there's no open strings. There's this part of Natural Science. Features this chord, G sharp minor with B in the bass, a first inversion minor chord. There's also these big sus2 chords again. And earlier, before that part, there's a B power chord, and you lower the B to an A before it goes to the... a bunch of really cool sounding chords. The intro to Fly By Night is a masterclass in taking basic cowboy chords and turning them into something more. So D major, then you have this chord, which you can call E minor 7, although I think Geddy's playing a G in the bass, so then it would be like a G6. And there's also this chord, so C sus2, G with B in the bass, a first inversion G major chord, then a first inversion G minor chord, B flat in the bass, and then an A major. So there's a chromatic move there. I'm a big fan of these chromatic type chord progressions. Closer to the Heart starts with these chords. It's just an A major chord, but you're opening up that B string. So you have fretted notes on the G and E, and in the middle, you have an open B string. And I like these kind of chord voicings where you leave an open string in the middle. Basically it's A, and the top note's just moving around. Then there's these chords, which is G, D, and F, all major chords. But the open E string on the top is adding extra color to all these. It'd be the 6th on G, it'd be the 2nd on D, and it'd be the major 7th on F. And then there's a suspended 2nd chord, a suspended 4th chord, and then straight A major. In Entre Nous, there's an A sharp 4 chord that happens at the beginning of the song. This chord here. Very much a Lydian type sound, it's a really nice chord. And then in the verse is a really good example of slash chords and inverted chords. You have A, G in the bass, D with F sharp in the bass, E with G sharp in the bass. And at some point in the verse, I think it might be the second verse, there's this high chord. So it's just an open D string and then a D power chord on top. Lastly, I want to take a look at the intro of Tom Sawyer. This features a really cool suspended chord as well. This is an E7 sus, and that same chord happens 2 frets down later. There's also an A7 sus. So once again, all of these suspended sounds, and it makes a really big, open sounding chord progression, especially with that low E hanging underneath. So you have E major, E7 sus, A7 sus, and D7 sus. The second time through this riff, Alex adds a suspension on the E chord. And on the E7 sus, he does this. So he's playing this chord here, which is like a D7 with E in the bass with no root. Or maybe you could call it an A minor 6 with no root. Either way, it's an unusual chord. It basically comes from flipping the pinky and the index finger around. And I'm a big fan of coming up with cool chord voicings just by moving your fingers. It's a very interesting sound. In the chorus, Alex plays the sus2 voicings I showed earlier. In this case, B sus2, but he adds the 5th underneath, F sharp, for a nice beefy chord. He also plays this extended E power chord, which is similar to the one from The Spirit of Radio, but even heavier. So there's a whole bunch of Alex Lifeson chords. Now, I'm sure I'm missing a few, and you can let me know what you think I'm missing in the comments, but this is going to give you a great start into understanding Alex's chord work in Rush. Now, he also uses a bunch of basic chords too, power chords, traditional bar chords, open cowboy chords, and the blending of the more basic chords with the more advanced voicings I just showed you is a really big part of the sound of Rush. Try a few of these chords out for yourself and see what you can do with them. And if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, all of that. Till next time. Stay proggy.